Our second district congressman, Jim Langevin, is on the Newsmaker line. Congressman Dan Yorke, how are you?
Good afternoon, Dan. I'm well. How are you?
Very well. Thank you for joining us. Summary judgment. What do you make of all this so far?
Well, it's unclear, but it's certainly very troubling that the president's former national security advisor, General Flynn, had conversations about sanctions with the Russian ambassador. Something that is what came up in those conversations, and then that was not what was conveyed to the vice president when it came to light that conversation originally happened, and it was conveyed that it was a conversation that was just about scheduling a potential call in the future with President Putin and President Trump, and it sounds like there was more to it than that.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about that. Before we get into the play-by-play of what you think happened here, tell me what the pulse of Congress is right now. I mean, all we do is have to follow the national reporting on this, but in the basement, so to speak, of Congress, what's the thinking? What's the direction?
Well, remember, a lot of this came from the fact that the revelations of Russian interference, hacking, or potentially trying to influence U.S. elections, and then, it has seemed to become more serious than that where there questions have been raised, have there been contacts with the the Trump campaign and or the transition with foreign nationals, and what kind of conversations had occurred. So there's a number of investigations going on right now, different committees. There's the 3 Senate committees and 1 House committee that are currently have active investigations looking into Russian interference in the elections and the administration. And now with these additional revelations about the Trump the campaign or transition having contact with foreign nationals from Russia, and there's more questions here than answers. And so rather than having this as a fractionalized process, yesterday I introduced a resolution to create a joint committee on looking at Russian interference in the elections and the presidential transition.
And how do you think that was received?
Well, what it would do, it will streamline things as opposed to having a fractionalized process. The colleagues that I've been talking to have been very supportive and believe that this is the right way to go. You actually now, as I understand it, even have bipartisan call for a joint committee to be created on the Senate side. We've Senator Lindsey Graham and I understand Claire McCaskill have also expressed interest in having a joint committee established as opposed to having multiple committees conducting this investigation.
Well, it's clear. We're talking about Congressman Jim Langevin. It's clear that this episode has taken what was, for lack of a better term, low-boil investigations on Russian discussion, Russian interference in the election, and jacked this hormonally to a whole nother level. So this notion of having, both houses kind of working together on this whole thing probably makes sense, only because now the whole story has caught such fire, right?
Yeah, that's right. More concerns have been raised, more information has been filtering out that this could be more serious than we had originally thought. Certainly, it's bad enough having the Russians attempting to interfere with and or influence U.S. elections. That's a direct attack, if you will, on one of the pillars of our democracy. And then to have other reports coming out that now there's high-level conversations taking place between people in the Trump transition / administration and the Russians, and perhaps other conversations that took place. All that is deeply troubling. So now you have, again, multiple investigations going on, and you run up against things like jurisdictional boundaries or battles that could occur, duplication of effort, potentially significant amounts of money. There would be significant amounts of money that was spent to do these investigations. And I say, look, let's cut through all the jurisdictional boundaries. Let's not duplicate effort. Let's have a focused, thorough review, congressional review and oversight over what the facts are. I've always believed that sunlight the best disinfectant, if you will. It's the sunshine is the best disinfectant, and they let the public see what the facts are, and we get that out as quickly as possible.
Do you have a personal reflection on following the trail of just public discussion out of the White House? Kellyanne Conway talking about the president having, full trust with General Flynn. Then the Washington Post story is released, and an hour later, he's jammed up the next morning. We have the press secretary, Sean Spicer, talking about lack of trust. And then today, Donald Trump more or less lamenting that his guy was treated badly, and if not for the leaks, I guess the assumption is he'd still be around. So there's absolutely no indication of the president feeling like he's been betrayed. It is very hard to follow the conversation, isn't it?
It certainly is hard to follow the conversation. First of all, the trust was still there, and then the next day it wasn't, because it was revealed that the vice president was misled about the details of actually the conversation that took place between General Flynn and the Russian ambassador. But the facts are becoming more and more clear that the administration was actually briefed several weeks ago that conversation had to take place, and the details that were involved in it. And so there was no outrage then. It seems there's only concern, and General Flynn had to step down because the revelations became public. So right. Where was the outrage, 4 weeks ago from the president or the administration when they were told that those conversations occurred, and nothing was done? They
right.
It got worked up after it became public.
Right. It makes that Sean Spicer presentation yesterday seem almost silly. It almost disingenuous, no doubt about it. Does your instinct tell you, like my instinct tells me, that there's no way in God's green earth that General Mike Flynn was freelancing in conversations, whatever specifics we're still to learn, if we do learn, about his conversations with the ambassador? That, I mean, all you have to do is just take a look back and refresh yourself over the campaign rhetoric that occurred all during 2016 to know that Donald Trump has been, very, very, very supportive of building a better relationship with Russia. That he couldn't, he almost wet his pants, for God's sake, over the WikiLeaks and Hillary Clinton email issues. I mean, does it take a rocket scientist to figure out that General Flynn was doing the bidding of the president when he discussed whatever relaxation of sanctions that might be coming here?
Well, certainly one could draw that conclusion, but we don't know until we know what the facts are. And in fairness to General Flynn, I think we all need to understand, was he acting on orders from or with the support of, the knowledge of President-elect Trump at the time? And that's why, having this out there is important, knowing exactly what occurred, so we end the speculation and we're dealing with facts, not innuendo and not speculation.
At the same time, this Rhode Island native might need some protection. It's funny, on the TV show earlier today, to be aired tonight, Timothy Edgar, cybersecurity expert and professor at the Watson Institute, told us about a law blog that he published today that I'll let people know where it is in a couple of minutes, suggesting that General Flynn may want to seek out the advice and counsel of the ACLU, because there's no doubt that even though this information seems so important, all this now, that it was obtained illegally, one way or the other, whether it comes from the intel community or, as Sheldon Whitehouse pointed out earlier today, it could come from inside the White House. But his rights were violated in this particular matter. And as someone who has been on the cybersecurity issue specifically and has been working really hard on it, and I know you have, do you have a thought about the criminality that actually gives us this story?
Well, first of all, I'm always concerned whenever classified information is leaked inappropriately. But on something of this nature, too, it could also, one could look at it that it falls in the category of whistleblowing as well, because clearly there was an effort to.
How does Mr. Snowden feel about that? You know, there's a guy named Snowden that's not doing too well with that whistleblowing thing.
Well, there's clear that's a totally different story. That it's probably time for another show.
Right. I understand.
Because I could have thoughts on that as well. But
I mean, well, clearly, I mean, if there, just to say, if there was, Congressman, if there was whistleblowing here, it seems like it's out of worry for the safety of the country as opposed to having other motives.
That's right, and that's why there's a difference between, certainly leaking classified information and a whistleblower who is doing something in the interest of the country, that the public has a right to know. That it's not like that a consistent story is being told here. That there's discrepancies about what the public was told and what actually occurred, and this is very troubling. That conversations about U.S. policy, those conversations being had about how an incoming administration was going to handle U.S. policy, and it's not like could there be a wink and a nod? Don't worry, this all going to be handled once President Trump comes into office.
You worried about? Listen, you've done a lot of security issues. You worried about the security of this country right now? Do you think this White House is so messed up that we have a lot to worry about?
Well, obviously, it's a new administration with no experience in the sense that President Trump has never held elective office before, and they're still many of them are new to government, trying to find their way. Certainly, he has also, though, surrounded himself with dedicated professionals who do have careers in government. For example, General Mattis and General Kelly and others in the security field, and so I have confidence in some of the people he's putting around him. But at the same time, you've got a new team over there, and they don't have the experience of dealing with this. I am troubled with reports coming out of the White House of disarray in the National Security Council. That's troubling. You never want to have dysfunction within the Security Council, and they've got to straighten those things out.
Jim, you had quite the event on Sunday at East Providence High School. Are you starting to feel like you're the right-wing conservative based on the number of people that are screaming nonsense in that auditorium the other day?
It was a lively discussion, let's put it that way, and people's passions are running high. There's a lot of fear in the community, of course, about what's going to happen with things like the Affordable Care Act, and you heard that throughout the discussion that afternoon. But I think, look, town halls are important. I do them all the time, whether it's in-person town halls, whether it's telephone town halls, or we do every quarter. I do what's called Lunch with Langevin, where we go to a local restaurant and we have pizza and soda, and people can come and have either one-on-one discussions with me, or whether they want to air a concern or a comment, or if they have questions, or if they have a constituent problem. It's about me being out in the community, or we do office hours. We also have people communicate through emails or phone calls or letters. It's about being accessible. We need to make sure that the people know that their elected representatives are hearing them, they're listening to their concerns, and we're taking them to heart. And by the way, I'll be doing my next Lunch with Langevin on March 11th at noontime at Coesit Inn in Warwick. And
what's on the menu?
And it'll be pizza and soda. So that's what we always do, and people can go by, and if they have a comment or a concern or a question, please, by all means, I'm there to listen.
All right, Jim, nice to talk to you. Congressman Jim Langevin, 2nd District Congressman. Always a pleasure. Thanks.